Hey guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I'm talking to Eugene Teo. You're going to learn a lot in this episode, specifically about Eugene's background, where he came up within fitness from commercial gym settings to touring, and now with his Gambaru app. And how did he manage that? How did he go through that? Why did he go through that? And I think if you are a fitness professional or looking to grow within the fitness industry, it's a very inspirational and interesting story. And we also touch on his background within bodybuilding. How competitive was he? Did he go to the dark side? Why did he transition out of bodybuilding? What did that mean for him individually as losing muscle mass and size? How did he feel about that? But also, how did that impact his business? What are his thoughts surrounding that? And then we dig into whether or not Eugene likes free weights more than machines or machines more than free weights, a discussion surrounding stimulus to fatigue ratio and some misconceptions surrounding that. And I think overall, just a really fun chat with Eugene. I think you're going to enjoy this a lot. And as always, guys, if you aren't subscribed to the podcast, please do so you don't miss out on future conversations like these. Please do share it around, give us a like, a strong review over on Spotify. It's all appreciated so we can continue to bring on amazing guests just like Eugene. But without further ado, guys, let's get into the show. Eugene, I first came across you and your content, I think maybe 5 years ago. It was a while ago that I saw kind of some of your content, and it was over on Instagram. And I saw this guy who was much more jacked than me, with huge calves, in fact. And I was like, who's this guy? And then on his feet were Vibram 5 fingers. And I chucked them away because, yeah, you know, they stink and I had holes in them at one point. I owned a pair of these. I actually ended up injuring my feet quite badly. So they left a bad taste in my mouth. And I essentially saw your content and you were kind of talking through these, I think doing one of your kind of tours. And I think I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to like pay attention too much to this because it was kind of like, this guy's bigger than me. He's wearing these funky shoes that I've already had a bad time with. I'll move on. But I'm so glad I came across your content again. And I'm a more mature person, much more mature now. But by the time I came to your content again, more mature, open-minded. And I came across your content during the lockdowns and it was super valuable. And you're someone who, as I've been watching you more and more, very well-spoken, really articulate, very good educator, and very open-minded too. Doesn't talk in dogmatic terms, very nuanced. So I knew I needed to bring you on the show eventually. But my first question is, do you still wear the Vibram 5 fingers, or have you found yourself moving to other footwear?
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me on, and such a warm welcome. I really appreciate that. But to get into the nuts and bolts of what you really want, the Vibram 5 fingers, I haven't worn them in a couple of years. More so because I just burned through my last pair and I just get kind of lazy with things, with buying new ones. And then I discovered Crocs, and that was a whole like, oh my God, this is amazing. And nothing against the Vibrams at all. I still think they're probably my favorite shoe in terms of just overall comfort. It's more a convenience thing where it's harder for me to get access to them as it is to Crocs, which is why I wear the Crocs. And Crocs get slightly less offensive looks, although they still get their fair share of offensive looks. Yeah, but no, I love the Barefoot shoes.
Yeah, it's Crocs I would say the Crocs for me are more comfortable but I guess once you actually get used to the Barefoot style shoe, you're okay. And by the way, the injury component was largely my fault. I think a lot of people, including myself, got into like Barefoot style footwear thinking I could just approach everything the same but in a barefoot shoe.
Oh, totally.
So I'd start running and everything in these, and then like I caused myself like plantar fasciitis or something at some point, and they burned me.
Yeah, my experience was kind of similar. Like when I first got into them, this would have been like 2012 or so, and I did the same thing. I just put them on and thought, it's just shoes. Surely I'm fine with this. Surely I can handle this shit. It's just, I'm fine. And I walked everywhere in them. I didn't do anything like running because I was just bodybuilding mode back then. But my lower back was fucked. Like my lower back and hips after like maybe a couple of days, I was like, oh, what have I done? Like, I thought I injured myself in the gym. I was like, I've done nothing. I've had 2 rest days. Why am I in such bad pain? And the only thing I could correlate to was like, oh, my feet are now having to do shit that they're not used to doing. And there's some time that you need to just adapt to it, which is why I think a lot of people get turned off from a lot of these things. They don't gradually expose themselves to it. And they kind of, it's a bit of an ego thing. You're like, oh, it's just barefoot shoes. How hard can it really be?
I love that because actually it's just made me circle just to a general principle that you've often talked about too, where it is that like gradual exposure. People often want to go like balls to the wall immediately with their training, a new exercise or whatever it might be. And it's so important to be like, hey, my body isn't used to this level of stress. So I need to allow it to be able to adapt and recover from that fatigue. And then I can progress it further in future. So it's kind of a good example of exactly that, which I think a lot of the audience are aware of too.
Yeah, it is just a human condition. Like we have this ideal picture of ourselves in our head, or this ideal thing of, I can surely do this. And when you go to write your own mesocycle for hypertrophy, you're like, yeah, I know that I can do this. Even though in your head, you got this ideal picture of what you could do, the ideal Steve Hall, who's ticking every single box, dotting every I, crossing every T. You write your program for that person, but that person doesn't exist. And then come week 2, you're like, holy shit, I'm fucked. And you got to curb your enthusiasm. I do that all the time, man.
I do that, especially when it's something that's particularly disruptive. I don't know, like a Bulgarian split squat or something, or an ab rollout. And I'm like, man, 1 set surely isn't enough. And I do 2 because I'm like, I want to do at least 2. And then I'm like, oh, God damn it. I should have just done the 1 set here. I'm sore for like a week.
Exactly. But now it's on paper. You're like, well, fuck, I've just got to follow it. I've just got to just keep going. And then, yeah, you just screw yourself up.
So this, I mean, fantastic discussion, but I did want to, as I said off air, talk a little bit about your background, because I think it's going to be interesting to a lot of the audience. I think a lot of the audience are coaches themselves in the industry, and maybe they look up, certainly a lot will look up to someone like you, Eugene, and be like, that's kind of somewhere I aspire to be with. Your own fantastic gym, by the way. I watched a gym tour and I was like, wow, this gym is just incredible. That's something I'd love to have. And also with your audience and your ability to educate. So I'd love to hear a bit about how you obviously started in commercial gyms as a personal trainer, then you were touring, and now you're on to like, you know, you've got your own setup. So yeah, I'd love to hear kind of what got you into the industry initially and how did you transition through it?
Yeah, so I just came up fresh out of high school, and I was studying at university, doing some management business degrees, and all I ever wanted to do was be in a gym. Like in high school, all I was doing was training. It's the only place that I really felt like I fit in. I was shit at sports, still am shit at sports, not very athletic, still not very athletic whatsoever. And the only place where I felt like I could do something was lift weights. And even though I wasn't very good at that, like I'm not strong, I'm not impressive in those realms. I just felt like, okay, this is something I can have some control and mastery over, where it's all just about me. It's not a team sport, nothing like that. It's just me against me. So fresh out of high school, the only thing I knew was training, and I started working in the gym as a personal trainer. I was at a Fitness First for several years and bounced around a couple of different commercial gyms until for about 8-9 years. And I just love that. I love that so much. Like I miss that now. And every now and then I'm like, oh, should I like take on a couple of people here and there? And but then I know that I just don't have the capacity to handle that, and it's a disservice to the person. That would be selfish of me to be able to try to take on a new client right now, because in the moment I think this is fucking awesome. I get to work with Coach Eugene, but then 2 weeks in they're like, oh, this is not good at all, because I just don't have the bandwidth to provide as much as I get excited. So I was doing that for the longest time, and the way that I guess transition, which is what I know a lot of trainers and coaches resonate with, is it's a very boring story, but it just came from being very excited about what I was doing with my clients, where I would work a lot with my clients, and the results I was getting, the way that I was explaining things to them, they wanted to know more. People on the gym floor wanted to know more. Like, hey, how can I work with you? And I was like, well, I'm at capacity already. I already have a full list, so I can't take you on. But I can show you guys what I do, or I can give you guys some kind of extra lessons on the side. Like I used to run seminars for my clients for free, saying, hey guys, I've got 30 of you I'm seeing in a week. How about we'll catch up this Sunday and just do a quick 1 hour chat about something or whatever. You guys all ask me the same questions. Let's do a squat session together. Technique only, no heavy lifting, just work on that. And that was my first exposure to workshops. And then people on the gym floor were like, that looks cool. How do I do that? I said, fuck it. I'll let anybody come along. I'll do these as free events. And that just built momentum. And then eventually that very much translates into, I'm doing these events for free. Why not charge for them? Or why not charge a nominal fee? Why not take them out of my commercial gym space where you're dealing with, the most average of Joes, the most just basic people, and take it more to the coaches who actually want to learn more from a professional standpoint as well. And that's kind of just where it grew. A lot of the online coaching side as well, which is what I was growing, was, again, a very boring story, in my opinion, where it wasn't an intention, but it was more just out of necessity, where I would find a lot of my clients, I was at a point with them after like, I've been seeing you for 3 years, 2 or 3 times a week for 3 years straight. You don't need me. This is not stimulating me. This is not stimulating you. If I'm having something to chat to, like, you're paying me to be your friend. Like, I'm not going to charge you to be my friend. You're better off still using me for convenience, for programming and for consulting, but we don't need to see each other 3 days a week. See me once a month, and I'll still give you all the attention that you need. We can still catch up and hang out whenever you like, or, within reason, of course. And that's what grew into online coaching. And I did that for a number of years as well. Not setting out with this idea of like living in Bali and having a laptop lifestyle and shit like that. I was like, oh, this is how I service my clients. And that's, went hand in hand with doing all the workshops that I was running. That grew into a point where I could then do it interstates, around Australia, eventually internationally as well, just through word of mouth and demand. And people were like, I like what this guy does. I like how this guy teaches. I like how this guy talks on social media. Because even back then, it was like 2013, 2014 on Facebook. It was just long written text posts that people love to read about. That kind of shit just dies now. You can't post that anywhere. Like, what are you going to do? Like, if people use Substack these days or Medium. I don't know how to use those kinds of things, but those are the ways that people can consume information. That's what helped me just grow and gain a reputation. And that just kept growing the way that it was. And then I encountered my next problem. Now, I'll keep this relatively short now, because I know that people are going to be like, oh, what the fuck, shut the fuck up, Eugene. Let's Steve ask another question. But at this point in time, I was touring around, having a great time, going all over the world, running events for biomechanics and nutrition and training and everything, and bodybuilding and non-bodybuilding stuff. The stuff you see now on my social media, I was teaching that nearly 10 years ago now in workshops. And I was running into the same problem again and again and again, where I would go to a gym and have 30 to 50, people who were paying good money to be there in that gym to come learn from me. And I couldn't teach them what I wanted to teach them because I didn't have a hyperextension in that gym, or it didn't have enough squat racks, or it didn't have a cable station, but it had a squat rack or something. And I was like, this is just frustrating me. Or it had everything, but it was too small for me to house the number of people I needed to. Or it was in a public commercial gym where it's just pounding with music. Like, you would know that gym, Muscleworks in London. Or there's another one in Birmingham. I can't remember what that one's called. Another one of those meccas of bodybuilding.
Ultimate Fitness? Is that what it is?
Ultimate Fitness. Yeah. Yeah. Have you been there before?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So,
it's a noisy gym, but it's like, it's that's what they want.
Yeah, which is awesome. Like, I want to train there.
For training,
it's a fun gym to train in. But you don't want to go there and try to sit and learn about the correct angle to hit the clavicular pec on a cable crossover, It's not the right environment for that. That's what I was in. I'm thinking, this is not good. That's why I made this gym. I was literally like, I need to make something. I got to stop complaining about this gym. I got to find the solution. And it was like, I've got to build a gym where I can no longer have an excuse to complain about not being able to teach what I want to teach. So around 2019, I started looking actively for a location and found this space and pulled it all together. I was on tour. I was in Denmark when I got the place, and I managed to organize everything, had it all get ready. By the time lockdown hit, like March 2020, and then I couldn't tour, which was kind of good because I was like, you know what? I'm fucking done with touring. I just done like 10 months straight on the road. I was like, I'm fucking burned out. Like, I was meant to go to Milan right when COVID hit its like critical mass point in Milan. I was like, I'm good to just not do that event.
It's
and that's the kind of like pushed me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so cool to hear about your backstory, because I think a lot of people think, especially listening to this podcast, to make it within the fitness industry at your level, I don't know, you need to have some PhD in sports science, something like this. Yes. And I was very similar to you. I went to university and got a degree that was completely unrelated to what I do now. I was just obsessed with the gym. I went into a career initially not at all like attached to fitness and health, but in my own time, I was very much educating myself about that. I actually got like a personal training qualification, and then I kind of let it all go and became a PT and just followed my passion. And I've got to an okay space within the industry now. Obviously, we all want to grow and get to more, but it's great to hear how far you've come from like grassroots, and also how you just followed your passion across the way and found solutions to try and help more and more people versus, unfortunately, at least my perspective is when I got into online coaching, it wasn't very saturated. You certainly didn't have business mentors for online coaches like you do now. And that's all I kind of tend to hear about a lot of the time is like, how can I make a 10-figure month, all of this? And people now, it feels like chasing the money. Like you said, people going to Bali and on their laptop and coaching people. And it's like this highlight reel. So it's nice to hear of someone who has that like ground root passion. And actually that's kind of the thing that's most important, to see growth within the industry. You can't ever let go of that, because that's what's allowed. It comes across whenever you're speaking in terms of your passion and wanting to help people. So yeah, it's nice to kind of hear all of that and for you to go through it. And I also completely understand why you want your own gym space. One, I guess, because you do a lot of content production yourself. So being able to have like the lighting and like no one in the way, and I don't know, tripod issues, in gyms nowadays. But also having brought like Mike Israetel over several times, we do our gym workshops. Even trying to find gyms like in London, but in many other cities, at least in London, we're lucky on Sundays, there's parts of the city that basically not die. They just like, people don't work on the weekend. So that gym is now available to hire. But it's like you said, there's some great gyms that you can hire potentially, but they don't always have the bits of equipment you want, and they're not set up for these sort of events like you have. So yeah, it's so great that you've got to the point where you can kind of have that, your own setup there. I guess now for you, the future is, I know you've kind of relaunched or launched your app through the Gambaru method. And I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of that name, what that concept was, and how that then goes into what people can expect from kind of if they're looking to join with that.
Yeah, so Gambaru, which I'm pronouncing incorrectly, which purists would be like,
I did too.
I do too. Like I'd make it rhyme with kangaroo because it's a bit of fun. Kangaroo method, but it's Gambaru. It's a Japanese word, and there are those words out there that don't have a literal English translation, and this is one of them. But loosely translated, it means to show resilience and to not just do your best, but to become more than your best in spite of like a lot of difficulty, which is something that I think all of us can resonate with. In the gym, but also not within the gym, where it's not just about, hey, show up and do the work, do the 2 sets of hack squats to 1 RIR and you're going to get awesome results. It's not just about that. Saying, you need to become the person, the ideal person we spoke about before. You need to become that person who has the more muscle mass or who is leaner. You can't just follow the plan and expect to live and breathe that result eventually. There is a transformative process within your mind where you need to become something different. And hopefully something better, something more than what you currently are. So you actually live that, because it's become slightly tangential, but there have been times in my life where, I have achieved certain things, but it wasn't necessarily because I really became that person who embodied that and who deserved that. That's how I feel anyway. And it wasn't until I really took a hold of that and became the person by doing the work and living it and transforming myself and mentally have changed my outlook on life, that I really then was able to become that and hang on to the results that I so craved or whatever for life. Something like, training now, building muscle mass now, being lean now, having good performance now. I feel like I am now that person as opposed to chasing just the result. But anyway, come back on track. That's what the Gambaru word means. Something that I stumbled across, would be a long, long time ago, just somewhere online. I was like, that's a cool word. So one day when I make a company, I'm going to call it that. And I did. And it started out back in 2016 or so, just as a website, a content page for me to just share all of my workshops, my teachings, videos, because I was filming everything back then as well. And I would just share that online so people who couldn't come to my events or wanted to learn more from me could just have it all accessible in one area. And then over time, it grew beyond education, because as you know now, some people want education, but a lot of people just want implementation. Like, cool, yeah, it's cool to know about the correct angle to appropriately hit my glute med in lengthened position, but maybe I just want to just get the fucking workout and just do it. Like, cool. So we built out an app to create that specifically. And that launched as an app, would have been, maybe it was 2020 or 2019, I can't remember now. And that's just been growing ever since. And again, like the same kind of pattern does evolve where it's like, I really love that and I've enjoyed how that's going. But I'll just look to my people and say, what do you guys want more from that? And they started asking for a lot of other modalities of like mobility or athletic training or calisthenics or just cardio stuff as well. And I'm like, I can write it based on theory. And I'm pretty confident it'll be a pretty good program if I wrote it based on theory. But I would rather use my networks to be able to bring in more people, to be able to say, okay, I can bring in an expert who knows more than I do at flexibility because they've lived it the way that I've lived bodybuilding. And they can then give you their knowledge in a better way. And of course, from a business perspective, that's even better. Instead of having my audience, I get so many audiences. But it also just came out from me saying, my members want this, and I know that I can't provide it to the best ability on my own. So I need to go elsewhere. And that was what the last few years has been about, is developing the technology to be able to support all these different kinds of training. Like for instance, like, for sets and reps, it's easy. Sets, reps, weight, the end. Maybe for a bodyweight exercise, you've got to like have a slightly different input number because you're using body weight instead of like an actual loaded weight. That's fine. But when you're dealing with flexibility, when you're dealing with like isometric timed sets, when you're dealing with interval timers, when you're dealing with just cardio as well, it's like, how do you then, you got to have an infrastructure built in for that into an app. And that's where it gets expensive and draining and very, very time consuming. But we finally got that all over the line last year in November, where we just pushed everything out and just released everything. And now we're happy days. We've got, I think there's 10 different people on there now, 10 different coaches, maybe 11. I've lost count. But we cover everything. Like Mike Israel, the RP guys, they are extremely good and have cornered the market on hypertrophy. So I'm like, I'm not even going to bother trying to compete with that. That's not what I care about myself anyway. But they're doing it so incredibly well. But if you ask them, hey, can we do bodyweight stuff? They're going to tell you, no, you can't. That's not what we do. Go somewhere else, which is what they do really, really well. And they focus on that niche. But now I'm very thankful to be able to say, like, I have very diverse tastes and I can then do that on my own, on my app, but I can also bring other people who have those diverse tastes and other members who have, mostly Gen Pop people, they don't care about bodybuilding for the rest of their lives. Most bodybuilders don't care about bodybuilding for the rest of their life. So it's like, how do you then give them something that will continue to excite them to do the thing that's most important, which is just exercise and follow a progressive plan long-term. And that's what, Gambo is trying to achieve, is trying to give people programs and control to be able to pick and choose what they want to do, build their own shit, create their own custom plans, and also get help when they need it, which I think is missing from a lot of apps where there's no real support system. It's kind of like, here you go, here's a program, good luck. Or maybe here's like a Discord group or something where you don't really get much help anyway. But I really wanted to be something that I wish I had when I was just starting out with training, because, same as you, I'm sure, you do a lot of dumb shit when you first start training. You waste a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like that, just the humility to be like, I could produce this, but I'm not got any ego attached. There's people in this space who are even more expert than what I am. Hey, if they are open to it, let's kind of do that, because that's the best of like both worlds for everyone. And that's going to give the consumer the best thing too. And I think apps are they're fantastic, because I was just thinking, you mentioned like not doing bodybuilding for your whole life. And that's basically all I've done apart from a small stint in powerlifting. But yeah, as I've been doing this for 15 years plus, I am starting to think, it would be quite fun to progress at something like a novice again. But where would I go? And then it's the perfect opportunity is your app, and find just like some programming for a novice at something completely different. And I think it's so great that that's now available, because I think in the past, I don't know, you had to buy a magazine or try and find it in a book and create this program yourself. Whereas now you can get it on your phone, and the support is that next level, because obviously a coach you could say is like the step up from that. But if you've got the app and
Sure.
then some support, you're close to what a coach would be providing. And for yourself, like you said, you probably don't have capacity to coach people online, let alone in person. But via the
Yes.
app, now you can help loads of people, and people might have similar questions. And if, I don't know if it's like in a forum or how you're kind of providing that support, but I mean, you've got answers for people that you can give pretty quick feedback.
Absolutely. And that's how I see it, is like I'm trying to find solutions to solve the problems that I would have. And I started to realize after a while that um, I've got to stop attaching my ego, I guess, to thinking that I'm all about that people come to me for just bodybuilding or muscle building or even training. And I realized, you know what? People come to me and they've come to you as well, um, because they trust you. They trust the people that you recommend. They've spent enough time with you to know that you've spent enough skin in the game to be able to give them a really good opinion as to whether somebody is worth talking to or listening to or learning from, even if they're not bodybuilding related or whatever. Like, you know what? I just trust his judgment. If you were to go like recommend a random piece of tech, if you were to go recommend a certain restaurant, people are more enticed to it because of you. And I'm like, that's what I haven't realized, that I haven't intended to, but that's what I've been spending my entire career building, is trust and reputation. The most important thing is not just to you make it all about me saying, hey, I'm the smartest, so you should follow me and do my programs. No, I'm someone that you trust because I've spent time showing that and living that. Here are the people that I trust. And I don't give out that trust so readily, but here's people I trust, and you can go to see them. And sure, you can get even better programs if you did one-on-one coaching of some sort. Never going to argue with that. But for most people who want to, like yourself, you're doing bodybuilding, you can still do bodybuilding, but now you can just dabble in something else and get a pretty good idea as to whether it's for you and make some good progress there, and even potentially just run with it for life from that. That's what I've really come to terms with mentally, I guess, is like, oh, okay, this is a very liberating kind of way to look at a lot of what I do.
I really like that. And yeah, starting quite specific and then broadening your horizons quite a lot. And you've mentioned bodybuilding quite a lot. Obviously, this podcast is largely a bodybuilding podcast.
Yes.
And I'd be remiss not to ask you about your background, your competitive history, because I don't know how much you've spoken about it. You probably have, but maybe not for a while. And I think I am interested, and the audience is interested, in terms of like, how did you get into bodybuilding? What was your competitive career like? And then what was the transition out of it like? I know that could be a long story, but I'm very interested to hear about it.
Totally. It has been a while since I've spoken about it, since I've even thought about it, because my last competition was 2015. So we're nearing on 10 years now. And which is, it's something that in a way I still call myself a bodybuilder, because, my training is still heavily hypertrophy biased. That's what I think most people's training probably should be, because it's the most fundamental thing for most people to make them better. But yeah, it's weird because I hear about bodybuilding shows or go to bodybuilding shows, and I'm like, this does not feel like me anymore. I look at photos of myself or videos of myself, and that's not me. It's so strange. But it was such a big part of my life, for that small part of my life, that it really consumed everything. And yeah, it was, again, fresh out of high school when I was doing my PT certs, or like towards the end of high school, I was doing my PT certs. I didn't know bodybuilding was really a thing. Like, I knew who Arnold Schwarzenegger was. I knew there was this vague idea of bodybuilding in general. But it wasn't until one of the girls in my class, in my PT school, she was a bodybuilder. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. Like, okay, this is interesting. I like training for looks, so I didn't know that was actually something that you actually would do. And then she put me onto a boyfriend who became eventually my coach, my first real bodybuilding coach. This is like back in 2008 or 9 or so. And that began a very toxic descent into the world of bodybuilding. That I have, I don't think bodybuilding is toxic. I don't think bodybuilding is bad. I know that it was wrong for me. Not because of the sport, but because of the people that I was around. The environment that I grew up in. I grew up in a very blue collar bodybuilding world, around a lot of people around who were just heavily into drugs, who were very emotionally unstable. And, I don't like to say it from an elitist standpoint, but who were probably doing bodybuilding for the wrong reasons. Not that I'm ever was someone who's saying, I'm the one who tells you what the right reason is. But you know when there's a fine line between someone doing something because they really love it or because it has a hold on them, and because they're doing it because they're seeking to fill a void for something else or to seek validation for something else. And that's what it became for me. And I think a big reason why is because that's the reason why it was for a lot of people I was around in that bodybuilding era, where there are some very, very smart, healthy individuals who are doing it for, what I consider the right athletic reasons. But there were some people who had a whole lot of just fucked up mental issues. And it seemed like bodybuilding was an outlet for that. And they were the people I was surrounded by. But still, it was a lot of fun. Fuck yeah, it was great. It's like awesome. So yeah, I remember like the first thing I did when I got into bodybuilding, I was 17 at the time. And I said to my coach, okay, I'm now going to set myself this goal of wanting to compete, but I don't want to compete until I know I'm going to just be dominant. So I want to make sure that when I get on stage, I've accrued enough time to I wanted to do the teenage class, but I wanted to be the oldest teenager on there to give myself the most amount of time to put on as much muscle mass. Because I could have competed that year if I wanted to at 17. I was like, no, the cutoff age is 19 technically. So I can spend the next 3 years or 2.5-ish years building up my body and doing this so I can have this goal set in 3 years' time or whatever to compete as a teenager in this show. That was my goal. And that was the decision that we made, and that was all we focused on. The next 3 years, it was just tunnel vision. I cut everything out of my life. And this was like fresh out of high school. You're into uni, you're into partying. I was like, I don't give a shit about that anymore. Girls, I don't give a shit about that. Like drugs, partying, nothing. It was just like, I want to train and lift, and that is it. And I lost a lot of friends in that time, but I was like, this is what I want to do. And if you ask me back then why I want to do it, I have no idea. I have no answer for you. It just had a pull on me, which is why I think in my head it was probably not the healthiest decision for me personally. For other people, absolutely. But for me, I was like, because I couldn't articulate why, other than just like, I love training and I like to look better. It was like, this is a weird thing to then completely transform your entire life and devote everything towards this one goal. That's kind of what I did. And I was of the mindset back then that whatever I'm told to do, I will just do. And I'll do it to a T. So if my coach didn't mention to me the idea of a cheat meal, I just wouldn't have a cheat meal. And that was the next 3 years. I didn't have a single cheat meal. I didn't eat off the meal plan he gave me. Not because he said I couldn't, but because he didn't say I could. So I was like, oh, here's my meal plan. I'm going to eat this exact same thing for the next 3 years of my life with these macro changes here and there. And that was it. Because I never posed to ask the question as to, hey, I feel like this isn't healthy anymore. I feel like I'm losing out on life a little bit. It wasn't until his competition that he was doing as a coach, and we went out for dinner afterwards as a whole like team. And I was like, can I eat this pizza? I felt bad having fucking mushrooms as a vegetable at one point because it wasn't on my plan, That's where I say there was a very unhealthy mindset around it. And that's why I say, like, when I talk about nutrition now, when I talk about training now, I talk about like what I do with Gambaroo and whatnot, I say, like, I wish I had this kind of guidance readily available to make better decisions. Because when you're young, you think, I'll just listen to the person bigger than me. I will, take up whatever they put out to me, because that's how you learn and get better. But there are downsides to that. But I did that, for successful. I was bodybuilding for between 2000. I was competing between 2000 and when was it? 10 to 15 or so. So like 5 or 6 years. Started out in the natural federations, and then went to the dark side for a couple of years, and really enjoyed that, because it's obviously a lot of fun, as you would not know about. You should really try it sometime. It's a big hoot.
I was going to say, don't tempt me.
Yeah. And then at that point, around like 2015, my last competition, I really started having a big hard look at myself and saying, like, I do enjoy bodybuilding. It is fun. Like, I really love the training side, but am I really doing this for those right reasons? Do I like who I'm becoming as a result of bodybuilding? And the simple answer was no. And so, like, I'm someone who really loves to learn and improve and to train hard and to experiment with like gym stuff. And I love being able to see I love the delayed gratification process and all those kinds of things. I said to myself, but do I love the aspects of bodybuilding, specifically of competition, of getting to like dick skin lean levels where it is inevitable that you're going to be a dick to be around? Like, I don't care who you are. You could be the most calmest, most pristine motherfucker, like an Eric Helms. He's a lovely person to be around. I know he's still going to be a dick like 2 days out. He's going to feel like shit, and he's going to snap at somebody. Like, nobody in their right mind is going to be just completely serene. And I was like, do I really like that I'm doing this? And I said, I don't. So why am I doing it to myself? Why am I putting myself to that point? Like, diet, get lean for sure, 100%. Get dick skin lean to the point where like just you're compromising your ability to function. I was like, I don't think this is actually for me. And of course, like when you're looking at like the enhanced side of things, like, is this really something that I really want to go down? Because I was at that point, right, 2015, I was like, okay, I know if I really sent it, I could probably go pro in a few years. I said I had the structure for it. I have enough knowledge and enough know-how to be able to then, enough of a base to be able to get to that point. I said, do I really want to get to that point? Who are the people that I look up to in the bodybuilding world as competitors? Do I want to have that lifestyle? Does that appeal to me? I said, it really just doesn't. Which is, there are other people who would be like, that does appeal to them. I said, great, fucking go for it. Send it. That's going to be a lot of fun and you're going to love that. But I said, that's just not for me. Like, do I really care that if I can squat triple body weights? And I said to myself, not really. It's just not fun after a certain point. And being on this side of it now, like 10 years later, I say to myself, what does it feel like to put 200 kilos on my back and squat it? Well, what did it feel like back when I did? And I was like, it felt fucking hard. And I said, what does it feel like now to put 100 kilos on my back and squat it? It feels fucking hard. It's just the same. And I was like, it took a lot more out of my life to be able to do 200 kilos versus 100 kilos now. It took a lot more time in the gym, but I don't enjoy it any more or less. And it's still just the hard work that I enjoyed. And I said, at some point, it's taking away from me more than it was adding to my life. So I just started walking away from it. And at the same time, it was very serendipitous that, things with business, traveling, touring, that was picking up a lot. And I was like, okay, I just can't devote as much time to my training anyway. So it just naturally transitioned me away from being so deeply into bodybuilding, and it became more about the people that I was coaching, people that I was teaching, the seminars I was running. I just went all in on that, which made just life a lot easier to pivot. Because I know a lot of people get lost when they stop doing athletic pursuits, whether bodybuilding or like CrossFit or whatever people are into. Once you lose that athletic pursuit, you can feel a little bit like, oh, what do I do with myself now? And you feel a little bit lost. But for me, luckily, I had something else to go to. That was pulling me elsewhere. And I was like, this is perfect. And that brings us to now, honestly, because it honestly gave me more opportunities to then lean more heavily into the things that I was doing as a bodybuilder that I knew weren't as optimal per se. Like some of the stuff you see me doing now, I'm not going to tell you that it's the best thing to build muscle. But I was doing it back then when I was a bodybuilder still. But I do a lot less because I was like, I know that if I've only got an hour, or I've got 30 sets in me today, I can't spend as many sets doing explosive plyometrics or Olympic lifting kind of stuff. I can't do that. It's just not a good use of time. And that's where things changed. But now I can explore and have fun with my training, which has been another enjoyable pursuit.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We create the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
So interesting. So many thoughts come through my mind as I travel through that journey with you. And I think it probably kind of opened a lot of thoughts for a lot of the listeners as well, where they're navigating in their minds as they're going through that, as I was like what's my why for bodybuilding? Like, am I similar to Eugene? I think a lot of people have to ask themselves these things, because certainly when I initially went into bodybuilding, I was very similar to you. It was like blinkers on, follow the plan. And I know my sister like spoke to my mum about being concerned about my like orthorexic eating, and my mum was like, "Oh, do we need to take him to a doctor and like have an intervention?" Taking Tupperware to cousins' houses and not eating their food and things like this. And it truly wasn't until, and environment is so key, like you mentioned there. I say this about being natural now. When I first got into bodybuilding, it was like Matt August was my inspiration. I found 3DMJ pretty readily. I just found the natural path. Whereas if I didn't, I think at that young age, you're easily influenced by the people around you and the direction they're going in. So I totally understand the environment component. But eventually, like I said, I came across Matt August and Lyle McDonald and flexible dieting. And I think some of the kind of natural side where you probably should have these prolonged off seasons to recover and really grow, then you don't have to have that blinkered approach. You can have that more flexible, more healthy perspective across the sport. Maybe even venture. A lot of people venture into powerlifting, but you could potentially venture into some other things. And then the competitive side is a relatively short duration. But in the enhanced side, and like you said, I definitely think you're right. You could have gone pro. Your physique was incredible. And I think if you kept building upon that, it would have been there. But it's often like year after year. And it's like, because you are investing more money, and also you're doing something that's potentially, detrimental to your health to some extent. You're taking a risk that natural people aren't. I think it does encourage that more like very focused, potentially slightly over rigid mindset. I can totally see that. And I think it's needed to some extent. But like you said, I think possibly people take it too far and they miss why they're doing it in the first place.
Absolutely. It's a very slippery slope because, the biggest part is like, being on gear just feels fucking awesome a lot of the time. It really is simple as that. It's like, you should try it, brother. It's fun. Don't. Disclaimer, that is sarcasm. Do not do this. But that's why it's so addictive. Like people say, oh, this is like steroids or testosterone, trenbolone. It's not an addictive substance. Yeah, you're not going to be sucking dick on a street corner to be able to get your next hit of testosterone. That's not what we're saying here. But you cannot tell me that there aren't going to be some triggers that are going to be put into place when you have this feeling of just like, I can achieve anything. And you can't tell me that because we are all, as humans, so emotionally attached to how we look and how we function, how we perform, that when you come off cycle, when you come off steroids, when you start to see those things disappear, that it's not going to have a hold on you and it's not going to drive you insane. Like as a natural person, I know if you have an injury, you spend a few weeks or months where you can't train, or you go into depression or whatever, and you go through a bad breakup, it fucks with your head. And when you add chemicals to the mix, it's fucked. And it becomes even harder to then make balanced decisions around why you're doing what you're doing. Because, when it comes to human behavior, like, why do we behave the way that we behave? Why do we do a lot of things that we do? We think we're making logical decisions, but most of it is completely irrational. It's completely emotional, and it's completely subconscious, driven by force that we're not really aware of. And I think a lot of people should pause for a moment when they're making those decisions around, why they're bodybuilding, period. Why they train where they are, period. Not even gear or not. It's just, I'm not going to be lecturing people about that. You do what you want to do. But just say, like, do you actually enjoy this? Are you getting a lot of out of what you're doing? Or are you running from something? And I can say that because I know that I was running from a lot in the past. Whereas now it's like not. The biggest liberating thing for me was when I was on tour, like 2018, 2019, and I was at my smallest. And I was like, I've got the least amount of muscle mass. I'm the least physically impressive specimen of a human right now. And you're paying me a lot of money to sit here and learn from me. And you're a lot bigger than me. And that's when I realized that it's not about the body that I thought it had been for so long. I was like, oh, this is the first time I realized people are here for me. People are here for maybe not even, maybe they're here for just the knowledge or whatever. But I was just like, oh, it's not the physique. Like that's a nice clickbait to bring people in, maybe, or to bring attention. But, you know, a lot of things grab your attention. You're not spending thousands of dollars on those things just because they grabbed your attention. You're spending time and money on it because they provided you value and substance. And I was like, oh, I have more value than just because I can pose and hit a lat spread. This is strange. And the more I leaned into that, it was, yeah, a very interesting journey.
I really enjoy that perspective, because I think part of what was going through my head was their concern of when you come off, one, how are you going to feel about being a smaller individual? But it sounds like you were very settled with understanding your value wasn't driven by how you looked, but also two, how would this impact business? But it's your trust element that you brought up before, and your influence wasn't based off how you were looking. It was the information you were providing, how you were providing that. And I think that's probably something that really set you up for success, because I could imagine if it was different, that could be a slippery slope for someone where suddenly their life is turned on their head when they invest everything into those perspectives and try to go away from it.
Yeah. And honestly, I'll say a lot of it was luck. Like, I think a lot of my success with business, yes, I've worked very hard on it, but I think a lot of it happened quite serendipitously because I was in the right place at the right time in terms of like social media. Like, I was creating content very early. I was just in the industry before it really blew up. And I was articulating things in a way that, you know, like you got this knees over toes guy ragging on about tibialis stuff and all these other muscles. Like, me and John Meadows were talking about this stuff about 10 years ago. We were just early and we were in this game for a long time. And it's just, yeah, I think that helped me a lot, where like I'll tell you for sure, like when I was coming off everything and downsizing, there were months where it was a fucking nightmare. One thing, because your hormones are just fucked, just trashed. Like, I'm not on TRT or anything or peptides or anything at this point. It's just been like, since I stopped competing, it's been zilch. And there was a good period of time there where it just sucked because everything's bottomed out. And you think to yourself, should I go on TRT? Should I try some stuff? Should I try to bring myself back up? But then you're fighting these things. Then you also find the forces of, oh, people are going to respect me when I'm small. I can't train the way I used to anymore. You got to navigate that journey and find that new balance. Yeah, it's challenging. And I consider myself very lucky to be able to have a lot of other things in my life that help pull me through it. In terms of business, in terms of just like my other training interests, where I luckily didn't make the whole life around just bodybuilding as much as I did. Still other good mentors who brought me into the strength and conditioning world or the athletic world as well, the mobility side of things. I always had those diverse interests that kept pulling me through bodybuilding.
So to shift perspectives a little bit, Eugene, I went to your YouTube channel. Like you said, you've been producing content a long time. And I went back to your oldest posts, and there was a lot of technique demonstrations of free weight movements. So lots of dumbbells, lots of barbells. And I think you're probably well known for having a maybe unpopular opinion about free weights in terms of their benefit for maybe a bodybuilder or anyone kind of looking to grow muscle. So I'd love to hear, how did that transition go where you're kind of, I don't know if you had somewhat of an attachment to those and then you transitioned away from them. How was that learning curve for you, and where are you now with it?
Yeah, this is the downside of social media, I guess, is people hear sound bites or the posts that they don't even hear sound bites, but the posts that I make that do really well and that people tend to come across, it'll be like, oh, Eugene said machines have value and they're better than free weights. It's like, yeah, I did. And I 100% believe that machines have got huge advantages over free weights for so many hypertrophy specific applications, 100%. I still do believe that. But if they consumed all of my content, even when I posted that specific post, they'll realize, oh, that's not what he's saying 100%. He's saying like machines have value. Not that machines have value and barbells and free weights don't. Because they've always all been a very big mainstay in my training. Because I'm just very much about saying, what's the best tool for the job given the current constraints I have and what's going to help me more. And And I would say 100% that for a lot of people, given their training history, given where they're at and given where their goals are, I would say they've probably tapped out a lot of the free weight stuff, or not tapped out long term, but they've sort of hit a point where a lot of those barbell purists, they could benefit a lot just from doing some more machine work, just because it's different, honestly. Just because, like you're saying, like you want to try a new challenge. Like if you've spent your entire life doing the big three and that's it, and you've gotten super duper fucking strong on those things, what would happen if you spent a cycle of training, one mesocycle, doing more stable machine-based movements from a hypertrophy-only perspective? I know that person's going to build more muscle mass. If you can apply the right targeted stimulus where you want it, you can get the exact same fatigue, but get magnitudes more stimulus, squeeze in more volume. They are going to build more muscle mass as a net result, assuming all else is equal in terms of enjoyment and all those kinds of things and availabilities of equipment. 100% believe that. I also believe that if somebody's a complete biomechanics, I say biomechanics in inverted commas, a purist of hypertrophy and optimal training nowadays, where they just use machines because they're more stable and aligned and evenly distributed forces or whatever, and you can adapt things to your ergonomics. I would say for those people, they would benefit a ton from the free weights, because there is definitely something that you just can't get from shifting some loads around in a very loose fashion. There is, even if we're looking at just from a joint perspective or a body control perspective, or a true like eccentric overload perspective, where like people, they turn their nose up at momentum. You know, you're using a barbell row, using momentum for that. That's bad. That's wrong. You should be able to do a nice, slow, controlled eccentric. Well, by the nature, and this may be something you might disagree with as well, so I'd love to hear the pushback on it as well. But if you can do a very slow eccentric on an exercise, you're not really overloading the eccentric component. Because for something to really push you to be overloaded, you should not be able to control the eccentric. You should be like really fighting, almost in a plyometric deceleration perspective. That shouldn't be the only thing that you do. You should definitely have slow controlled eccentrics a lot of the time. But I think a lot of those purists who hyper-focus on a really slow, rigid transition point and really slow moving eccentric, and they turn their nose up at momentum, speed, and that deceleration demand placed on the body, they're losing out on a lot of potential benefits. And it could even just be from a tendon perspective or a joint perspective. We're having to catch a dropping weight, a weight that you physically can't control, and you have to force yourself to try to control it, and you can't keep it to a 3-second eccentric or a 4-second eccentric, and it becomes more like a 1/2-second eccentric. That's beneficial for its own separate set of rules. And I think when we're looking at the human body out of the lens of hypertrophy, we're looking at it more at the lens of the human organism, not just purely from sarcomeres and actin, myosin, and passive active structure, but look at it from like the whole human body. I want resilience everywhere, because a more resilient body, you can then push it to its hypertrophy limits if you wanted to. A more mobile and robust body, you can do anything with it. But how do you get there? It's not just from having the one stimulus, slow and controlled, machine only or barbell only, free weights or whatever. You've got to have a mix of everything. And there was a big point in time where I was very pro on pushing out content around the use of machines. And the reason why was because people weren't doing it. And I was like, this is what people need more of. They don't need me telling them, hey, you should use more bench press stuff. You should do more barbell push presses. There's enough of that out there. I said, what do people need to hear more of? They need to hear more about the benefits of a hack squat over a barbell squat. They need to hear more of the benefits of the unique benefits to back machines of being able to overload lengthen position, which is something that you can't get from most free weights back exercises. You are missing out on that lengthen challenge. And that's why I started creating a lot of that content, because it was needed. But of course, what does well, people hear about, and they're like, Eugene's the machine guy. He's the science guy. He's the anti-bro guy. Like, no, I'm a fucking bro. I grew up around bros. That was my thing.
Yeah.
It's a fun way to train.
For sure. And I appreciate that, because that's the perspective I thought you took, was very much like, hey, machines are great, but also it doesn't mean shun like free weights. It's very much like you said, the right tool for the job. And we know variety is important, and we shouldn't just discard tools because, again, I guess people are always looking for that silver bullet. They're looking for the one thing.
Yeah.
It's like hack squats are the best exercise for the quads. Oh, great. I can chuck out everything else. Don't have to worry about it. And when that perspective shifted, like, oh no, there's many tools that you could use. And maybe at certain times you want to vary it because that hack squat becomes stale or it's uncomfortable on your joints, whatever it might be. So I really appreciate that perspective, because I was very much a barbell purist like you. I did squat, bench, deadlift for the longest time. I thought there was something special about those lifts, uniquely hypertrophic. And then I moved away from them. And I haven't moved so far that it's machines only, which I think some people have taken that perspective again on social media. You see these, like, you kind of put biomechanics, like these young guys who are like 20 years old, 18, and they've heard that, oh, the bench press might not be the best tool. And they're like, you should never bench press. It's a terrible lift for the chest. It's like, really? These powerlifters are pretty big chests, and they're basically only bench pressing. Now, they might have joint and connective tissue issues, because maybe if they varied with some cables and some machines, they'd feel a lot better and they'd be able to potentially grow even more muscle that way. But that's not their objective now. They're trying to shift as much load on the bench press. And yeah, eccentrics you mentioned there, and my kind of view on that. I think initially I just had no clue about this sort of thing, and I was just lifting. And then I got to this point, actually it's like the midwit meme. I kind of got to this, like I was like, just kind of lift and have control. And then I got to like, oh no, I must have 3 to 4 second eccentrics, pause at the lengthened position. If I have any sort of non-control, if my eccentric speeds up at all, technical failure, stop that lift. And then I moved back to like the Jedi who has now like learnt the way. So long as you have control, lift heavy, like if it feels good, great. Like that's kind of where I've got to. And I definitely think there could be something to that, like eccentric, where it does have a lot of force within that lengthened position. You almost like that negative connotation of like bouncing. It's like, what are you bouncing off? Like there's still muscle involved there. People are still growing this way. Is it worth the fatigue cost that maybe it generates because you're probably using loads that you can't control as well? There's all these discussions, and there's probably like a range, and if you're outside of that, it's probably too far. That's at least the way I see it. But man, bodybuilders grow with such a variety of means, and so long as they're lifting and they're under control to some extent with heavy loads close to failure, they seem to be doing all right. Could you argue for slightly better ways? Maybe.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, even if you're not controlling it, like you look at a guy like Branch Warren, he's just proof that you don't need to have any range of motion to be able to grow muscle. You know, like you can just completely send it and just will yourself to grow muscle, and your body will somehow. It's amazing. Yeah, I think I think the cool thing about bodybuilding and hypertrophy is, as much as we know about how to build muscle, I think people have forgotten that it is actually very easy to build muscle. It is probably one of the easiest adaptations to elicit in the body. Like if you try programming somebody to improve their vertical jump, that's fucking complex. If you try to improve an elite athlete's, like a sprinter's reaction time or change of direction or things like that, that's fucking tricky and complex. If you want to improve a pitcher's throwing speed or whatever, that's fucking complex. Even like rehab stuff gets really complex. But muscle building, the stimulus you require of tension, there are so many ways that you can go about doing this. And it is so versatile. That's what I love about bodybuilding, honestly, because you can still pursue the sport of bodybuilding or growing muscle, take it out of the sport of bodybuilding, but you can still pursue growing muscle and improving the way that you look and feel from a visual perspective, and do so many wildly different things. And I think it's very much about trying to find things that you really enjoy, and not taking the fun out of it as well. As long as you're not getting, you're not posing injury risk or danger. But even then, like the human body, we're not fragile. I think it's something that really needs to just come to terms with. Is people get so freaked out about saying like the stimulus fatigue ratio, one of the best, most important things that Mark Results ever put out, that I still like, everyone I think should be well versed in that as a starting point about how to choose what they're doing. But I think one of the negatives to that is people have now become so terrified of fatigue, and they see themselves as so fragile. And it's like, how the fuck do you think you're going to get better? You need to push yourself to a point of fatigue. You need to push yourself to a point where it is too much. And then you know what happens? Your body will either die or the organism will improve and it will adapt. But you need to have those truly fatiguing points where, like, maybe even in the gym, you are going to like those vulnerable points where it could be a bit of a coin toss between, is he going to make it or is he going to snap something? Like, I don't recommend that a lot, probably ever, but there is a point where we need to like not be afraid of this fatigue thing. Say, oh no, like barbell back squat, it's too fatiguing. Not enough stimulus fatigue ratio compared to a hack squat. It's like, well, motherfucker, you want that fatigue if you want to just grow some hair on your chest. Like maybe you need to actually put yourself to that point because you need to learn how to just build that resilience in your whole organism that you can then take to the hack squat. It is so easy to do a hack squat if you have mastery over a barbell squat or over a deadlift. Like it is so easy to perform well because you know how to handle high levels of fatigue. So when you take that fatigue away, watch what happens to your body. And you simply can't create that fatigue resilience just from the one modality of just slow and controlled, just having good RIR, just having stability all the time. There has to be something else thrown into the mix. Not all the time, but you know, the 80-20 rule is to do a little bit of it in your training every now and then to push those limits. And for me personally, this is completely my bias, but I just find that more fun. It keeps things exciting to be able to do something that's suboptimal, but it can still be justified because muscle building and getting stronger is such an easy goal, such an easy target to hit and to elicit as adaptation. You can do virtually anything and you're going to get results from it, drugs or not. Advancement level or not as well. Just having novelty can create those responses. I say mix it up. Just do it progressively, of course, and stick with it consistently.
Yeah, I agree. I think there has been that kind of tendency to just focus on stimulus and view fatigue as just negative, but it's like, you know, a stimulus fatigue ratio is a bit of a misnomer in some ways because to get stimulus, like that is fatigue at the same time. Like accumulating metabolites, pump, like getting soreness, disruption, fatigue, that is like localized to the muscle. That is fatigue. It's just like, I think a lot of people forget that and they're just like so focused on fatigue as just everything. It's like, no, that's like unwanted joint connective tissue fatigue and things like this that we're trying to not get. And often the things that generate the most stimulus for the muscle also generate the most fatigue. So if you just chase low fatigue movements, you're also going to get low stimulus. And then people get into trouble of, they need 52 sets, let's say that, for their quads. Yes. So, you know, you get into situations like that. But Eugene, this has been a fantastic discussion. I've had so much fun. And like I said off air, I think I'm going to have to bring you back on at some point because I think there's so much value that you have to add. And I know the audience is going to really enjoy this. So thank you so much. And if people aren't aware of where you're at, if they want to consume more of your content, where should they be heading?
I'll tell them just find me on Instagram, find me on YouTube, and you'll be able to just start there and see if you like shit. If you don't, I don't want to hear about it because I'm very fragile.
Fantastic.
I really appreciate this opportunity. It's been a lot of fun.
Of course. I'll make sure those are all linked in the description so people can check those out. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.